Connor. I am sitting down with Michael, who made Nothing Good Can Come of This. Why don't you walk us through the game a little bit? How did you come up with the idea?
So I made the game for school. I was at the NYU Game Center's master's program, part of the initial class of the whole MFA, and I was in this course called Prototype Studio, in which you create a new prototype by yourself every week for 14 weeks, and you're given a prompt for every week. And for that week, the prompt was just the word violence. Just make a game that embodied violence to you. And for the entire week, I couldn't think of anything, or I played with a few concepts, but nothing really worked. And then my personal website, the Sunday, the day before it was due, this was due on Monday, just kind of went down for the entire day. So I had no idea what happened. There was some database issue, so I had to reboot my website all day from scratch, and it was just a frustrating kind of experience. And from that well of frustration, Kate was born this game that was inspired by the initial concept of Saw, where you're just two people stuck in a room and there's a loaded gun. So just really quick, in 6 hours, I put together the prototype after fixing my website, and just figured I'd have a situation in which the violence is completely coming from the players. It's a hyper minimalist game where it's just everything is black and white. The only other color is red for blood when someone actually gets shot. But there's two people equidistant from the center of the room, and through a hole in the center, a gun and a bullet drop. And it just becomes a fist fight over the gun, and the person shoots the other. That's the synopsis of the game, and that's where it comes from. That well of anger and frustration, and the Saw inspiration.
Interesting. Yeah. Do you think was there any sort of commentary you had in mind about gaming as a whole as you were putting it together?
Absolutely. The violence in the game is completely from the players. I just dropped a gun in between them. It's kind of like imagining myself just dropping it in between them and seeing what happens, because there's no reason to be fighting. There's no reason that you are shooting at each other. You just give two players access to a gun, and they'll find a reason to shoot at each other. There's no prompt. There's nothing. And people always go after each other, and people have fun. It's fun just fist fighting and struggling over this gun, just scrambling around and then shooting the other person's head off. And there's a whole strategy to it. If you're too far away from the other person, they can dodge it, the bullet, as it comes at them. If you're too close, the gun has a minimum range. It's like a shotgun. So if you're inside of that range, you're not going to hit them. So you either want to have the other person be in the middle somewhere. And if you jump to dodge, you can't really adjust your velocity when you're dodging, so you're sitting duck. So there's this whole strategy of juking back and forth, trying to get into the other person's headspace in order to shoot them, and also trying to get the bullet. There's only one bullet ever at a time. And once you shot it, the only way another bullet will spawn in the center of the room is if you let go of the gun. So yeah, there's all these layers to this hyper minimalistic fighting game. One of the other inspirations I should mention was Towerfall Ascension, because I love that game, but there's so much in it. There's so many different rules and ways that it could be a little bit imbalanced depending on one character's loadout over another and stuff like that. So I just wanted to or Nidhogg. Nidhogg was another version. Just pare everything down to one completely equivalent interaction. Just make it as minimalist as possible. Yeah, so that's me ranting about that.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. So did you have any ideas through the development process that didn't necessarily make it into the final game?
Yeah, like most developers have grand expectations. I wanted there to be a randomization of guns. This time it's a crossbow, this time it's brass knuckles. This time it's some other kind of weapons, but in particular, gun violence is a thing I feel strongly about. And one of the commentaries of the game is that if you give someone a gun, they'll find a reason to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is exactly what happens with the players every single time. And the secret message of the game is kind of found in a secret ending that only a few people have found on their own. You don't know
Yeah, I don't know. I've played the game, but I've never seen the secret ending before.
Yeah, it's if players don't use the gun, if they just play around and jump around for 20 seconds, a door opens.
Ah, interesting.
And you can both leave.
Yeah.
And the title of the game changes to apparently something good could come of this.
Whenever I'm there playing, it's usually I'm drinking with my friends and we're trying to kill each other. So we never made it that far.
Exactly. Like, I've taken it to conventions, I've taken it to events, festivals, and stuff like that. Like a total of 2 people have found it on their own. You know, one person was just like, "Oh, I wonder what happens if I just don't shoot the other person at all," out loud, and I was like, "You got it.
Yeah.
You got what the game is actually about," which is just a comment on gun violence and how, like I said.
So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about the actual development of the arcade cabinet. Now, I don't really know too much about that, but I saw that you had some layout on the site for Nothing Good Can Come From This, like how it was set up. Is there any differences or anything you could walk us through on that?
Yeah, this is something that I actually can speak intelligently about because it's my experience. What's it called? So the arcade cabinets, I took like all the dimensions of a traditional kind of asteroids cabinet. And I wanted it to not look too funky or out there. I know some of the cabinets at Death by Audio could be outlandish or shaped like a wedding cake, let's say, or you know, they have strange setups. But with mine, I wanted to make a cabinet that was traditional looking at first glance, but also has some amenities for me in particular. The top half and the bottom half are completely separate from each other and connected by wooden just pegs to dowels to keep it from shifting around. And that way I was able to like basically cut it in half and fit it into the back of the hatchback to transport from place to place for like one festival that I went to or this other event. You know, just once in a while when I transport it, it's easier because you just cut it in half. It has wheels at the bottom, so you could like, you know, move it on casters from place to place. Just as a small innovation right there. The coin door, I just needed a coin door in the proper place. It's not connected to anything, but it looks naked. The bottom half of an arcade looks naked without a coin door there, you know?
Yeah, you need that coin door.
Yeah, since I was a kid, I wanted to have an arcade. Put Street Fighter on it or something like that. And this one was not made with a CNC machine or anything like some of the newer ones at Death by Audio, the nicer ones with the nice panel outside. I had to jigsaw this by hand. The CNC machines are expensive to use. So I just got a bunch of plywood and just by hand after tracing it out with pencil, and then stuck it together using, you know, screws and wishes. Just a lot of hope keeping them together. And then 2 separate doors, one for the top and bottom with their own locks. And it was very useful. The bottom is completely hollow, so whenever I'm taking it to festivals, I just stick my additional, you know, banners and gear in there. And so if I like don't have my hotel room yet, I just stick my entire suitcase in the bottom.
Doubles as a carrying case.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so why don't we talk a little bit about, I guess, your relationship with Death by Audio Arcade and Wonderville? I mean, how have you come to know them? How have you have you progressed your relationship with them?
So I met Mark, who founded Death by Audio Arcade, at my my thesis for the MFA program at the Game Center. I was showing off 3 of my games there, One was my thesis game called Asterisk, which was like FTL but real-time multiplayer. And that was, everyone was having fun playing that, but in the corner I had a side like old laptop playing Nothing Good, and Mark created it and said, "That's the game that I wanted." Death by Auto. That's he was there scouting for new stuff, you know, because the game was super simple. The way I designed it, I wanted it to be played on an old school NES controller, you know, just direction buttons, A, B, start select, that's it. Just wanted it to be as simple as possible as a constraint. Because when you're designing a game, like the more constraints you have, the more focused you are, the simpler it is at times. So I wanted it to be something that people could just play with no tutorial, because the number of buttons they could actually press is limited. And that translated well to an arcade cabinet. 2 buttons, just a joystick, boom. People don't need to be taught how to play this thing. They just pick it up right away. So that was a good fit. And it took me a year to actually, like, it was more like 6 to 8 months to actually call up Mark and follow up on his offer to make the arcade cabinet, because this was an investment. It was a lot of money that I had to like buy the plywood, buy the plexiglass, buy this, buy that, and stick it all together, although it paid. But eventually I got together with Mark in his studio, and he's the coolest guy ever. Super, you know, he's like this really awesome setup at his studio, and it was such a blast just going like once a week just to make progress on this thing. And eventually we came out with something that actually worked. Used an old computer of mine as the core of it, just running Windows, and you know, got all the parts together and somehow made a thing that worked.
Great. Yeah. That's awesome. Do you have anything else you want to say to the folks watching at home supporting Wonderville for the Save the Arcade fundraiser?
Wonderville is an amazing place and a great experience, and I love it so much. Like everything about Death by Audio, I'm sure you know the whole journey of Death by Audio, from being in an underground nightclub that was uprooted by Vice magazine, and then in the wind for a while. Just the arcade machine is just homeless and wandering around from place to place in private office buildings or apartments and stuff like that. Having Wonderville as an actual like open space for this weird collection of indie games is completely unique. There's no other place like it in New York City or anywhere that I know of. And I love just going once a month to run a tournament, you know, pre-COVID, and have everyone competing and having a blast and having this strange, special experience.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope that we'll be able to all come together, do that again soon.
Oh, I wish. I hope.
Yeah.
I'm so fortunate to like even be a part of this. Thanks, Mark. To have this opportunity to have an arcade machine and to actually have it displayed in this way to the public. And it's just so much fun just to like watch from the back of the room as people pick up the game and learn its controls and how it's played for the first time, and just kind of like it fills me with so much pride that I was able to actually do this, and having that space where all these other creators have their weird games there is such a special thing.
Great. Well,
it's a wonder.
Yeah. Thank you for the time. Appreciate you stopping by, talk about Wonderville.